Alright, so I want to discuss literary theory, and I haven't discussed literary theory for a while since I did a good video on Marxist literary theory, and I plan on doing more stuff on literary theory here in the future. I have a couple of books which I plan to use for that purpose. Find the other one. Plan on using this book for this current video. Contemporary Literary Theory by Zeldin and Woodison. And I plan on using this book, Literary Criticism by Bressler, to go over some ones I want to go over. In this video, I'm going to go over structuralist literary theory, and I also want to go over in other times. I want to go over psychoanalytic literary theory, deconstructionist literary theory, and post-structuralist literary theory, as well as a few certain others. So when it comes to structuralism, we think about, think about Ferdinand de Saussure. This is the course in general linguistics which his pupils collected for him. It's basically his course of linguistics, and his linguistics are structuralist in that they have the idea of a sign, and they have a structure above language and speech, or langue and parole. Those are the two main things. He says that language and speech are not entirely directly related to each other, that they are they are structurally related to each other, but not in a sort of direct way. And when we have a sign, according to Saussure, a sign, it doesn't involve objects. It doesn't involve a reference. It involves a signifier, and it involves a signified. A signifier and a signified. The signifier is like a word. Say the word cow. The word cow is the signifier. The signified is the thing. Is the concept of a cow is what is signified. So those two things together make a sign. That may just are the general idea of what a sign is. So this general idea of the sign and structuralism of Saussure and Peirce, even that they do talk about Peirce in this chapter on structuralist literary theory in there, but I won't really go into it. But when it comes to language and speech, there's a bit of like a void between them. Not really a void, but they are, because they are structurally related. However, they're not entirely related. I mean, when it comes to speech is a performance, where language is a very systematic, big thing which needs to be analyzed. And semiology or semiotics is basically the study of analyzing the inner workings of speech and language, however you want to look at it. Basically, Saussure's course in general linguistics does that, and there are a lot of other semiologists like Umberto Eco, of course Peirce, and Dewey, people, and there's like a lot of others, including Kristeva and Eric Ray. So literature has a special relationship with language. So, like, what does all this have to do with literature? Literature is, of course, a book that we are reading, that we're trying to understand, trying to get some sort of meaning out of, trying to understand what the reader or what the writer is trying to say, and what the text is saying. So, different literary theorists will look at things via just the text, or via just the writer, or via Jonathan Culler, the reader. But pretty much literature, when you read literature, that is language. So you might think this structural linguistics, which is about language, why would we want to apply this thing about language to literature, which basically is language. Um, it's kind of not correct to identify literature with language, because literature is a creature of language. Literature comes from language. However, it's not the same beast. It's not the same beast to be tackled. So we can apply the models of linguistics and semiology that we use for language to use for literature. And basically, what that would entail is saying that there is a structural, inner, realistic, objective meaning which needs to be just taken out and figured out and possibly even interpreted. So, and this comes from having a narrative analysis versus a discursive analysis. And a narrative analysis is where we get a lot of our food for getting meaning from things if we're using a structuralist model. And I say model because you can be a structuralist and use those same things for literature, but you can also not be a structuralist and basically use the model as a metaphor, or and just use that for the purpose of analyzing text. So narrative analysis, which is, narrative, it's a person speaking. That's what is where a lot of things in analyzing literature comes from. Discursive analysis, we still get a lot, but we don't get as much. Discursive as in a discourse, where in a text someone is talking about something. They are, and there's like an argument being made, or information being directly given without any sort of narrative aspect. So we can take literature to segments and identify signs and sort of figure out meanings there. And we can even take things into phonemes and morphemes and words and predicates and all these different things to try and even get things down to the bare bones of things, and then work our way back up into getting an actual meaning of this whole thing. Now I want to talk about two other structuralists besides Saussure. One is Jacobson, who talks about the idea of aphasia, which is a speech defect, and that applies to narrative analysis because it's somebody speaking, and the speech defect allows for interpretative application. That it allows for someone to be able to interpret it rather than having to just break things down and then bring them back up from what we have, where the interpretive application allows us to possibly go in a different way and interpret things differently than we had previously thought, due to his idea of the speech defect. And I do plan on reading Jacobson at some point in the future. I don't know when, but I don't know. I don't have a whole lot of books about literary theory. I just have a few, and those few are comprehensive. So I don't have like specific text, because literary theory is not my big thing. It's not my main thing that I like to do. So so I think it's still really, really interesting, though, especially because I study all these theories in a more philosophical way rather than a way pertaining to literary theory. So then there's Lodge, another one, who has the idea of autonomy, which is the shift from one element in a sequence to another while maintaining meaning and context, and that can allow for a realism to be able to emerge, because if we can shift from certain elements while analyzing text, we are able to keep our meaning, keep our context, and possibly even gain more contexts, and thus have a objective, realist thing kind of emerge. Structuralism introduces a rigor and a objective element to the character of literature that you don't really find in some others. Structuralism is a realist objective theory, whether we're talking about it with respect to language or philosophy or whatever, including literary theory, it is a realist objective thing. It claims that there is a realist objective thing that we just have to somehow get out. And like I said, some will use Saussure as a linguistic model to analyze literature, even though they don't think that there's a perfect, perfect realist objective thing within every piece of literature. So, structuralism, gives one the scientific ambition to discover rules, codes, and systems underlying human, social, and cultural practices. So basically, literature is a big thing because it corresponds to who we are as people. It kind of gives you a little picture of who we are as people, socially, culturally, emotionally, physically, in all different kinds of ways. Literature in itself gives us, some sort of a not entirely detailed picture of who we are as people. And I think that's kind of interesting because that's a lot of what existentialism is about. It's about figuring out who we are as people. And I think a psychoanalytic or a existential theory of literature might be able to do that pretty well if we want to figure out who we are as people. But structuralism claims there to be a system, a structuralist system within every piece of not within every piece per se, but within literature that can be decoded and extracted, so that we can get out that real, objective, realist meaning and truth that is within literature. Personally, I don't agree with this theory. I agree with deconstructionist literary theory. Because I don't think that there is any perfect, realist, objective system, structural or otherwise, within literature or philosophy anyway. So that's my personal opinion on that. So let me know if you think I messed this up or butchered any of it, or left, or just did something wrong, or if you want to add something to this, comment below and let me know.